You know, the thing as we talk about the way in is the way on, as we've been going through this series, you know, that phrase, at first it's like, what do you mean by that? But this place of, if you think about Jesus' followers, you can imagine being them, and he says, come and follow me. And they had to make that choice to trust that or not, to give themselves over to Jesus. And you think, well, why did they do that? It was kind of probably a lot about the way on part. Like, I want my life to matter. He says he will give me life the full. He says I can live in my identity and live in this freedom. He says that there'll be the things that he can do for me are beyond what I can understand. And I want to also be like this person, Jesus. I want to get close to him to be like this person, Jesus. And so what you fast forward and you look at the end of when they're writing years later, these same people, man, did their life take the right turn? Did it not become full of life and be used and purposeful? But it happened because they followed Jesus. That means they trusted themselves to greater and greater degrees to the person of Jesus. They came to know who Jesus was. And in that relationship of Jesus, transformation, these good things and this good fruit came out of them. But the way they did that, they followed him in to all the parts of themselves. I mean, you guys don't understand you're a mixed bag, right? You're really good people. You're not really good people. I mean, it's a mixed bag, right? And we often think as people what God would want, he would want us to get to a place that we could get things arranged in our life so we could better follow him. And the very things that often we find ourselves resisting and thinking are actually roadblocks to how we follow him, the paths we think are roadblocks, they're actually paths instead of roadblocks. And so with the way we follow Jesus is we follow him into things like we talked about, like we follow him into our anxiety and allow him into those places that he can show us himself and show us his perspective. We follow him into our insecurities. We follow him into our desires, even good and bad. All that we desire, all we long for, we allow him into those vulnerable spots because he knows who we are. And so this effort is really a place of, it's not striving, it's a place of yielding. And so today we're going to be talking, very good timing, I might say, on the area of gratitude. We're going to talk about following Jesus into our gratitude. And I want to just start with this verse, and we're going to come back to it. But I want you to just hold this kind of story in your head as we talk through the whole time, and we'll come back to it at the end. If you imagine this is on the way to, notice Jesus, it's a lot on the way, everyday stuff. On the way to Jerusalem, he was passing along between Samaria and Galilee. And as he entered the village, he was met with 10 lepers who stood at a distance. At the time, they were unclean. Everybody just stayed completely away from them. They were put together away from the city. And they lifted their voices saying, Jesus, Master, have mercy on us. And when he saw them, he said to them, go and show yourself to the priest. And as they went, they were cleansed. Then one of them, when he saw that he was healed, turned back, praising God with a loud voice, and he fell on his face at Jesus' feet, giving thanks. Now he was a Samaritan. Jesus answered, were there not 10 cleansed? Where are the 9? Was no one found to return to give praise to God except for this foreigner? And he said to him, rise and go on your way. Your faith has made you well. We're going to be it's going to be pretty simple this morning. What this 1 out of 10 person did is tremendously significant what the other 9 did. And what he received and what came out of that was completely different. And we're going to talk about that. Now, when we talk about gratitude, you know, this place of following Jesus into our gratitude, There is a lot of study on gratitude. Who's kind of familiar with some of the studies on gratitude lately? Anybody? Well, there's lots. It's been kind of there's like tremendous, and once one study hits something, they said, we got to try this again. So there's been repeated studies on gratitude, and so if you go and look it up, you'll see it just everywhere. And here's the thing, gratitude's really good. In fact, it's not just good, it's just almost amazingly good. It's just the stats, the brain science on gratitude is just amazing. Now, for me, I am a person who often doesn't trust someone who's extremely positive. I'm just being honest. I'm not saying it's a good characteristic, but if someone's really positive and I can't find anything, they just are so positive, I don't know about you, right? I remember one time we were in a Bible study. Debbie and I were there. I think we were married. This was like a small group, and we had a Bible study at this person's house, and we really were going through some really dry times. But there's this one gal at the time, young woman, who had this positive attitude, right? And so we had a time to share anything, right? Pretty much share anything you're depressed about is what pretty much the Bible study was. But we'll share whatever's happening, right? And my friend, this loved Jesus, very positive, just begins talking about how good this was, and how God did this, and how God did this, and how God did this. And I remember thinking, oh, you're going a little too far here on this Jesus thing, It's like, and she was just sincerely sharing everything positive. And there's this one guy we had in there who had just become a Christian out of a really rough situation. I'm talking about a really rough situation. He was just trying to figure out Christianity. He had been through hell and back. And he's sitting there and he's listening to all this and he's looking at her and his life's like barely on the edge, and he goes, in the middle of this nice woman sharing, right in the middle of it goes, yeah. As a leader, I hadn't had training on what you do at that point. But here's what was so strange about it. You know how comedy is, whatever's in your heart and thinking, the comedian says it because it's there, and then for some reason it's funny? That story is funny to me. It's not sad. It should be sad. But I just think there's often times we're caught in this spot in a world that we're suspicious of too positive people because if you're real, isn't this world pretty hard? Isn't there a lot of pain in this world? And so there's this thing of ditches we fall into, and one is that because of the pain, we become extremely mentally try to be as positive we can about everything and deny pain and the difficulties and the things that are hard in this earth. And so we can just live in that. It's going to be okay. It's just, I think I can, I'm positive. And I'm not saying that's terrible, but it just is a ditch, right? Because then you're not in touch with the reality of the pain of this world and having the compassion, all these things, right? But I would guess, since I've been your pastor, you're probably more in my ditch of like, yeah. I mean, you're not quite in that ditch, but you're in a ditch in which that you literally get suspicious of two people too positive, and you have a tendency of slipping into the spot of noticing and speaking about the things sometimes that are not great, right? Proclaiming them as bad. At the same time, as I look at my life, do you know those people who you're around and you say something and all of a sudden all their grumbling and all the things they're feeling that are hard just start coming out? And I'm not talking to you guys, I'm talking about those other people, right? But they start coming out. I was at this wedding recently, and I met a complete stranger from out of town, and we're sitting together, and I asked him a couple questions, and all of a sudden, he began speaking declarative statements of horrible stuff, and I thought it was like me trying to throw positive water on the fire, just put it, oh yeah, there's a good, and I finally just had to walk away because I couldn't stop it, right? So it doesn't take a genius to realize I don't want people who just share the negative. I don't want people just who try to stay on the positive. What does it look like? And here's what I would say. Because, in the Vineyard, we talked about this at the Newcomers Hangout. One of our words is real. We want to be an authentic community. An authentic community doesn't mean to be a group that just espouses pain and sadness, right? So what do we mean by being an authentic community of faith? The way I'd say it is this, is I want to be a person who's really in touch with what's wrong in the world while living in ever-increasing gratitude. That is a beautiful thing, right? We can almost feel what that feels like, right? That person who's not unaware, but is authentically grateful in all the circumstances they're in, right? Now, the studies have been pretty crazy. This is a study out of, it's not out of the seminary, it's out of Berkeley, so very close to the seminary, yeah. But this is a study out of Berkeley, and this is a study that's, it's basically a study of good, it's a good science center in UC Berkeley, and they've taken all these studies and put them together, wrote this paper, and there's a lot in it, but these are some of the highlights it starts out with. This is what happens when they've studied, very detailed, study after study, when people are living in gratitude. They have better physical and psychological health, and they increased happiness, life being satisfied in life, decreases materialism, less likely to suffer depression or burnout, adopts healthier habits, better sleep, less fatigue, more resilient. I mean, the studies, it just keeps going. I just had to summarize it. What's interesting is here's a summary statement they say. Gratitude lives up to its reputation as the mother of all virtues. This is Berkeley. By encouraging the development of others' virtues such as patience, humility, and wisdom. So there's this thing in gratitude. Here's some verses I just want you, they're familiar verses. We're not going to spend a lot of time on this, kind of we're setting a foundation, kind of just of what this looks like. So, in the book of James it says, don't be deceived, my beloved brothers. Every good gift and every perfect gift is from above, coming down from the Father of lights, with whom there is no variation or shadow due to change. Paul says this way, rejoice always, pray without ceasing, give thanks in all circumstances, for this is the will of God in Christ Jesus for you. Do not quench the Spirit. Give thanks in all circumstances, for this is the will of God in Christ Jesus for you. Philippians, which Paul wrote from prison. Finally, and justly imprisoned, he wrote this. Finally, brothers, whatever is true, whatever is honorable, whatever is just, whatever is pure, whatever is lovely, whatever is commendable, if there is any excellent, if there is anything worthy of praise, think about these things. What you have learned and received and heard and seen in me, practice these things, and the God of peace will be with you. I mean, we could just go on many verses. We see it through the Old Testament. If you look in the Psalms, you look at coming to the place of coming to God and living in this place of gratitude and thanksgiving, right? So, the Bible aligns, What you see differently, though, in this place is that, that there's that every good gift, it gives a source to those good gifts. There's a unique difference between that and the studies. There's a source of good. There are a source of these gifts, and that source is God. So this place is all gifts come from God. And then there's this practice of gratitude. What we see in all these verses, and there's a place of choice that we practice gratitude. There's this place of participation in this relationship that we choose. And notice, when we are to practice gratitude, when is that? Pretty well covers it over and over again. In all things, in all circumstances, in everything, it just keeps going on. And then you look at the things as understanding that we practice it in difficult times. We practice when we're feeling great, when we're having struggles. It's not pretending we don't have those things. It's in those places we find this place of how we see, how God sees in that situation. Now, gratitude is this thing that is pretty broad. Whatever is good. I like this is whatever. It gives to, I didn't even highlight the other one. Whatever. Because sometimes we think of big things and thinking, I won the lottery. I guess I should be grateful. I just got paid this amount. I should be grateful. I got a raise. I got this. I had that. I had a kid. Should be grateful. I had a kid. That should be good. So we have these kind of like big moments that we think, oh, it deserves gratitude, right? What he's saying is, no, this is something that is very much a continuum in the way you live. It's in all things, very small things and very large things, right? And let me give you a few examples because I've been practicing. Okay, I got to practice gratitude. So I'm paying more attention this week, right? So I just gave lots of time for things that I just started feeling grateful for after I just was quiet before God. And there's quite a range. One is my home. This is one of the big ones. Because Debbie and I were at a spot, we had no money, and miraculously, we were looking to rent right as we were starting the church and coming on staff, and I went off to this Vineyard pastors group, and a guy looks at me during the prayer time and says, no more tents, no more tents. He says, does that mean anything to you? And I instantly thought, renting or buying? And he goes, you're not supposed to rent a house. You're supposed to buy a house. And I thought, oh. And then I had Debbie feeling like God told us to stay in Kirkwood. Those two things do not line up. And so I said, I wrote it down. I went home. And Debbie says, I have this house I want you to see. We went over to this house that we live in now. And as soon as I walked in, I felt the peace of God. And then when a smart person on our board, John O'Shaughnessy, finds out that because we've been in Palo Alto and didn't know we'd owned 2 other homes, we'd been so long, we're now called a first-time buyer, and they had this clause that you can pull 401ks out at no interest and no penalty at all, and use this as down payment. And lots of other amazing things. So, I'm telling you, when I walk in that house, I can feel how much God He cares for me. At the time, we had no idea we have a church here. We had none of that idea, right? And it just, I can feel it when I walk in the house. I can feel the same feeling I had before. And I can feel who God is in that moment and how much He cares about things like that, which I wasn't expecting. The next one is taking out the trash. I do not like taking out the trash. I have Alexa remind me. I actually get mad at Alexa. I know. Alexa, leave me alone. I don't want to take out the trash. And it just keeps going off. And I don't know why. It's because I always get settled down. It's always cold outside. It's not even a hard thing to do. So I go and I get my trash. So I'm hauling the trash out. I'm just kind of grumbly. And all of a sudden, there's this stillness. I sit there and I realize I'm looking up at the sky, and there's this gorgeous moon. It's not as cold as I thought it was. And I just stay there for a while, and I keep looking at the sky. And I remembered before I had a relationship with Jesus, deep space freaked me out. Like, woo! Don't, you guys have had it, right? You're in the pickup in some state. You're looking up and you're wondering about like how small you are and how you're a drop in the universe and you mean nothing. And pretty soon you're like, we got to stop, guys. So I looked up there and I felt, oh, this is just part of his handiwork for me while I take out the trash. I just sat there and I could feel God's presence. And I could just know that he was taking care of things. Now, how can that happen? I don't know, but that's what I remember. I have another one I thought about is that, I think about the place we had Mark and Gail Pedersen, who are ascending pastors. We had a long relationship, gave us a electric kettle back before they were normal. Like only the Brits had electric kettles. The Americans didn't have very many electric kettles. And they brought me some from Canada. They found this electric kettle that would heat water like that. And I remember how cool it was. By the way, you should get an electric kettle. I'll help you out if you need help on which one to get. But electric kettles are fantastic. And every time I'm like brewing my coffee or my tea and I set kettle, and even after I've changed models, when I use an electric kettle, I think of God's faithfulness and the kindness of Mark and Gail. And how God brought them into my life. And I think about all kinds of things that are tied to that every time I use electric kettle. So you need one, so I go to your house, I can think about Mark and Gail as well. Or then sometimes it's just memories of times where, one memory I have was we were in our living room. I will not tell the story because it's probably not appropriate for church, but it was with Annie. Annie may not know the gal here's my niece, and we were there, and my mom was there, and Debbie was there, and we got to talking about something, and something was said, and we couldn't stop laughing. We laughed. In fact, I can see if Annie's listening. Where's Annie at? Is she even here? She's just. So if you right now, Debbie's trying to think about it. So it's like we just laughed. We couldn't stop laughing. I mean, to this day, we can just say one word about that scene, and we start laughing. And I just thought about how good God is, that he has humor, that he actually has humor, that he loves us to enjoy. Have you ever seen when you have a kid that just is laughing their head off as a parent? There's like nothing better, right? So as we look at this, as we think about what took place in this story, here you have this amazing thing that happened. If you can imagine and put yourself in this story where there's these people, and probably what we can tell by the context, it sounds like it's likely mostly Jews, and then there's a Samaritan mixed in, but the only reason they're hanging out is because lepers have to hang out with somebody, and they're outside of town, they're hanging out together, which is very unusual, likely what took place. And all of a sudden, Jesus is coming by, and they decide, we're going to all ask him together. I can just see him like, ready? Here he comes. They keep their distance, but they begin shouting out to them, have mercy on us. And so then he goes and he saw them and he tells them to go to the priest. And as they're leaving, and these 10 are leaving and walking away, all of a sudden they start noticing. Just imagine what this felt like. All of a sudden they start noticing, are you, hey, Bob? I guess it'd be, not Bob, but whoever it'd be, some Jewish name. So, is that, whoa. And they're all experiencing this, and they're healed. And, I mean, here's the question. Was that pretty good for them? All 10 of them? Oh, man, it was really good for them. I don't think they said, well, I don't really care if I had a healing. I know, it's a good thing, right? But one of them turned back. Said, this came from Jesus. And so they went back to Jesus and just began, you can imagine, shouting as they're coming towards Jesus and then dropping at his feet and just thanking him for what he'd done. What is good in your life? Remember we talked about the whatever. Remember, whatever is good. What is it? Whatever is good in your life. What is good in your life? Recognizing that and understanding that you can really take that in the middle of all the things of life that aren't good. You know, it's not denial. It's not being inauthentic. It's being actually moving to reality. It's seeing clearly. You know, this is, when Paul talks about this, he's talking about thinking about the good things. He's in the middle of an unjust prison sentence. You know, this whole thing of practicing gratitude, there's this kind of process that we go through in practicing gratitude. You know, it's this place in which that we understand that every good gift is from God. That is a really simple but very important thing to understand. Whatever is good, God is the source of that. Then you kind of notice what's good. Even God helps us with that even. But we notice what's good, what is true, what is honorable, what is pure, what is commendable, excellent, anything worthy of praise. Like, what is that? And then as we think of it, we reflect on that. We reflect on how good those things are. And then we thank God, praising God with a loud voice. We go to Him. We go to Him and say, thank you for that gift. And we understand who Jesus is, and we connect to Jesus by that turning back and choosing to give gratitude for what was good. I mean, I want to talk to the parents. If you're not a parent, you can pretend like you are right now. But you guys know this feeling with your kids when you love them so much, right? I mean, we're sinful parents, right? But I mean, we can get this. You love your kids so much. It's deep in your heart. No matter what, you love them. And you want to give them every good thing you can. But you know that feeling when they're just not seeing it, not even aware of it, not even noticing it, or telling you they don't like what you've given them. That feeling, right? You think, oh, you still love them. You're still right there, continue to give to them, right? But put that in contrast to the time in which you have a child you deeply love, right? And you fix them the meal, and you give them the gifts, and you give them those things. And that child understands, this came from my parents. This came from, this person who loves me. And they begin receiving that gift and enjoying that gift, right? And that gift takes them back to the place of connection to the giver of that gift. And those moments are like amazing. That's the best part of the gift, is a spot of that you begin experiencing, the child and you begin to experiencing the love that gift was intended for, right? But as humans, we can go through life and we can just kind of say, thanks, God. And sometimes we flip them off. I mean, we go the whole range. But when we can really understand that every good and perfect gift, and we make this choice to begin living that truth and acknowledging that, it changes things pretty dramatically.